Every night before bed, Mai would climb onto the little wooden stool near her bedroom window. With her notebook in her lap and a pen that sometimes refused to work, she began to write. "Dear Moon," she whispered softly. It was quiet again today, except for the wind and the old cat outside. She wrote everything, the way her classmates didn't notice her, how the teacher never called her name, and how sometimes she felt like a transparent ghost drifting in the hallways. But she always ended her letters the same way. "I hope you're still out there, listening. Love, Mai." When she finished, Mai folded the paper carefully, stood by the window, and held it up to the sky. The wind never took it. The paper never flew. But still, she did it, every night. She didn't know if the moon could read. She only knew it watched, and somehow that made her less alone. That night, just as she blew out her bedside candle, a soft glow flickered outside her window. Mai turned. There, in the dark blue sky, the moon looked just a little closer. Somewhere beyond the clouds, in a place no rocket had ever reached, there lived a boy named Solin. He didn't live in a house, or a city, or a world like ours. He lived in the light. Solin was born from moonlight, or at least that's what the older stars said. His eyes shimmered like silver mist, and his hair moved as if wind always touched it, even when there was none. Every evening, when the moon began to rise, Solin would sit on the edge of the light field and listen. Most nights, there was nothing, only quiet beams of light sweeping across the sky. But tonight, he heard a sound. Not a voice, exactly. Not music either. It was a feeling. Warm, gentle, sad, hopeful. He followed it, through arcs of moonlight, past sleeping comets, and toward a thin shimmer in the sky. A window. And through that window, he saw her. A girl, small and soft, holding a letter against the sky. Solin had never seen someone from the other side of the light. And yet, her presence made something stir deep inside his chest. Something like memory. Or maybe something waiting to become memory. He reached his hand toward the shimmer. It didn't open. But the moon brightened. Just a little. Enough to let her know. She was not alone. The next night, Mai wrote again. "Dear Moon." She whispered as her pen scratched softly across the page. "I saw you shining more than usual yesterday. It felt like you blinked at me." She smiled at her own silliness. But the feeling was real. Different. Warm. She folded the letter, stood at the window, and held it up again. The sky was clear, no wind, no movement, but still, she waited. Above, Solin had returned. He sat on his knees at the edge of the light field, holding a glowing piece of thread, woven from light, memory, and soft echoes of her words. He didn't know why he was doing it, only that it felt right. He let the thread float downward, careful and slow. Mai blinked. Something shimmered at her window. It wasn't a letter. Not wind. A thread, thin, silver, and glowing, had appeared, stretching from the sky straight to her open hand. She didn't pull. She didn't speak. She simply closed her fingers around it. And at the same time, far above, so did Solin. Neither could see the other clearly, but both felt it. A pulse of connection. A heartbeat between stars. a thread between two quiet hearts. Since that night, Mai kept the thread. She didn't tie it to anything. She didn't hide it. She simply held it, every evening, as she sat by her window. The silver thread never tugged, never pulled, but it glowed softly whenever she whispered to the moon. Above, Solin began to build. Not with stone or star, but with paths of light, shaped by thought, guided by longing. He traced a spiral around himself using his fingers, and where they passed, a glowing trail remained. Each day, he sent a little more light down the thread. And each day, Mai saw things in her room shimmer. Dust floating in strange patterns. Shadows dancing a little longer than they should. One night, she reached out with both hands and closed her eyes. "Can you hear me?" she whispered, not out loud, but into her chest. In that same moment, Solin closed his eyes too. Their fingers didn't meet, not truly, but a pulse passed between them. Not warmth, not cold, light. And for the first time, Mai didn't feel like she was writing to the moon. She felt like she was being written back to. For days, Mai stopped writing. Not because she forgot, but because the thread had become more than words could reach. Every night, she simply sat by the window, both hands around the silver thread, eyes closed, listening, feeling, waiting. And every night, something grew in her room. A shimmer, a warmth, a shape in the air that danced like mist, then faded just before she opened her eyes. Until one evening, a letter appeared. Not one she had written. Not even paper. Just light, gathered gently on her windowsill, forming letters with no ink, no edge, no hand. She reached for it, and it entered her palm like memory returning home. Meanwhile, far above, Solin watched. He had sent no letter. Not intentionally. But something in him had opened. Something in her had listened. And between them, the light had written itself. Later that night, Mai drew a shape on her notebook with her finger. Not a word, but a spiral. A soft glow remained where her fingertip had passed. She smiled. And the moon, far above, brightened again. Not to watch, but to listen. One night, the thread dimmed. It didn't break. It didn't vanish. But Mai could feel it. Something had changed. The letter of light no longer came. The shimmer in her room had stopped dancing. She held the thread in silence, unsure whether to speak or let it go. But the silence was heavier than before, like a room where someone used to be. Far above, Solin sat alone beneath a sky that was no longer soft. The light field had cracked at the edges. Galaxies flickered and trembled. Comets passed without singing. He had not meant to fade. He had not turned away. But even in the sky, there are places where light gets lost. He reached for the thread. It was there, faint and cold. "I'm still here," he whispered. No answer came. But a storm did. A silent one. Waves of stillness rolled across the stars, pressing down on the space between him and Mai. Back on Earth, Mai sat by the window through the night, waiting, hoping, feeling the thread in her hands like a breath that might not come back. But she did not let go. And neither did he. And even though no words passed between them, the moon glowed just enough to say, "Some connections don't need to speak to survive." I didn't know how long it had been since the thread dimmed. But one night, just as she was about to turn away from the window, a flicker moved across the glass. Not light. Color. It shimmered gently along the thread, hints of blue, soft pink, and gold dancing like watercolors blooming on paper. She gasped. The thread pulsed again. Not bright, not strong, but real. Above, Solin stirred. The cracks in the light field hadn't healed, but stars began to blink awake again, one by one, like eyes remembering how to see. He reached for the thread again, not out of fear, but with care. And this time, it answered. Color traveled downward, each hue carrying a message without words. I watched it spiral through her room, gently wrapping her walls in warm, glimmering patterns. Her sadness didn't leave, but it softened, like a hand resting beside hers. She reached for her notebook again. For the first time in days, she wrote, "Dear Moon, I didn't know colors could come back. But they did." Far above, Solin placed his palm on the thread, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you for still being there." That night, the moon rose higher than usual. It shimmered, not with brightness, but with presence, like it had something to say. I held the silver thread, now alive with color, and felt a quiet invitation in her chest. She opened her window wider. Above the earth, Solin stood at the edge of the sky field. Around him, stars bloomed like flowers, galaxies spiraled in rhythm, and the thread glowed as if the night had found its voice. Then, something happened. The thread lifted. Not pulled, not forced, just drawn. Gently, I followed, floating upward from her window, not with wings, but with memory and light. She rose past rooftops, past clouds, past the edge of all things familiar. And there, between the sky and stars, stood Solin. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their hands met. And in that moment, the sky bloomed. Petals of color spiraled outward from their touch. Every letter I had written, every word she thought no one heard, unfolded like glowing feathers, drifting softly into the sky. They stood together at the edge of a world made from words that mattered. Words that had waited. Words that finally reached the one they were meant for.